What's going on, Rutgers wrestling fans? Nick Kosko with you, along with my broadcast partner, Matt Howe. We're excited for another season of Rutgers wrestling, getting ready to kick things off on Friday. In just a few more days, folks, back at the barn, Rutgers wrestling taking on Clarion. We're going to have that match for you on Big Ten Plus, of course. So, Matt, I mean, this is really exciting, man. Got to start out, man. Princeton Open results from this past weekend. We saw numerous guys wrestle attached, saw some guys wrestle unattached as well. Coach Goodell said at Media Day last week that they're going to really take advantage of that new redshirt rule for the true freshmen. They can wrestle in 5 separate dates, still keep that redshirt, so that could be huge for some of the young bucks. But, you know, just a couple of the results from the Princeton Open. Dylan Shawver and Dean Peterson, that's a battle at 125 we're going to be talking about in just a second. But they took second and third, respectively. Both only just lost to Pat Glory from Princeton, last year's national finalist. Nico Messina, 5th at 133. Joey Oliveri up at a new weight this year, 141, probably going to stay in redshirt, but he took first. Andrew Clark going down to 157. He took first, beat out teammate Al DeSantis for second place in that weight class. Connor O'Neill down at 165 this year. He took fourth. True freshman Luke Gayer took sixth. Then at 184, John Poznansky looking fresher than he did at the end of last season, took first at 184. And then the freshman PJ Casale up at heavyweight now. He was the top recruit at 220, but he's wrestling heavyweight for college. He took third, looked pretty good as well in his first college action. I believe he wrestled attached as well. So, I mean, what are your big takeaways from a couple of those guys, those early results in the season so far?
I just think it was interesting seeing the different weights that guys are wrestling at from last year to this year. You mentioned a couple of them. Andrew Clark's down a weight from 165 to 157. We'll see how that bodes for him, how that turns out. Also just seeing, like, you know, you mentioned at 125, the battle that Rutgers has there going on. You know, and the redshirt rule is probably the biggest thing. Guys wrestling unattached, 5 dates. It doesn't mean 5 matches. It's 5 dates. So one tournament counts as 1 date. They can wrestle as many matches as they have in that tournament, and it counts as 1 date. So 5 dates, and they can still redshirt. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the team shakes out when we get to dual season, especially in the Big Ten schedule. I think we'll have a really good idea of what the lineup will look like by that point. Who has used their red shirt or not. Obviously, John Poznansky, it was hinted that he might use a red shirt this year, coming off that injury last year. And they have that stud Brian Soldano at 184 as well. So they have 2 really good guys at that weight. I really hope Paz wrestles this year, though. Obviously, he's fun to watch, but got a little banged up last year, and he still has that redshirt year. But so a lot of storylines going on with this team heading into the season, but it's exciting.
Yeah, man, we'll get into some of those lineup battles, because Coach Goodell obviously said during Media Day last week that, I mean, this lineup is not set at all. They're going to take some of these dual meets and these big tournaments early on in the season to really determine what that lineup is going to be. Nothing's set in stone, and obviously, as we keep mentioning, the redshirt rule is going to be huge moving forward for this year, especially you mentioned 184. I mean, that could be a situation right there with Brian Soldano and John Poznansky. I guess we'll just go down the lineup right here. And obviously at 125, I'd mentioned before, Dean Peterson and Dylan Shawver. Shawver, obviously an NCAA qualifier. He looks really good. Dean Peterson looks like he's healthy, and he's down to weight now. Both guys had crazy matches with Princeton's Pat Glory on Sunday. It was actually, I was able to watch Shawver's match against Glory in the first place match of that Princeton Open. Both guys very close with a national finalist. It was very good to watch, but that's going to be a battle, because obviously we know the Rutgers program and Coach Gale, they don't like wrestle-offs. They love those indicator matches, but also they use a lot of those tournaments and dual meets early on in the season to really determine their lineup. So, I mean, what do you make of Shawver and Peterson? Obviously, Peterson, a very hyped recruit, once a Princeton commit, but he flipped to Rutgers last summer. So, and he was in red shirt last year. What do you make of these two guys?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Shawver was tough last year in the matches he did wrestle. He got in a couple big dual meets. And you mentioned it, Peterson, big recruit. I think they're both going to see time in the beginning of the season, obviously. And, you know, it's a weight class that Rutgers really, needs someone to step up big in the lineup this year. They start at 125 for most every home match. That's a spot where Goodell likes to start the matches at home. So they need a tone setter at the top of that lineup. We'll see. I think it'll be both guys are solid options there. I think Peterson will eventually take over the spot. That's kind of what he was, recruited for to be that guy at 125, but Shawver's tough. So it'll be interesting to shake out. But like I said, I think Peterson will have that spot by the end of the season.
That's an interesting prediction right there. Well, we're excited to see both these guys. Of course, 133, Joe Heilman, the transfer from North Carolina, obviously has a lot of Jersey ties from South Plainfield. His older brother wrestled for North Carolina, but of course, coming from that South Plainfield high school room, we know guys like Anthony Ashnault, Scott Del Vecchio, among others that have come through that Rutgers wrestling program. He's going to take over 133 because Sammy Alvarez is bumping up to 141. We mentioned his weight issues the past couple of years, struggling to stay down at 133. He obviously broke out in 2019-20 at 133 as a true freshman, qualified for NCAAs, was named an NWCA All-American after the tournament was canceled. But, the past couple of years, he's been struggling with that weight, but he's at a more comfortable weight now. Looks bigger, looks fresher, 141. So we know Heilman's going to bring it. Former NCAA qualifier, should be a hammer for Rutgers at 133, and then Alvarez at 141, and Joey Alveri up at 141 as well this year. Didn't even certify at 133 this year, as Goodell mentioned during the media day. It's interesting, though, Matt. It's like now they're going to have some good depth right there at those lower weights, but now they have Alvarez at 41, Alvarez at 41. So God forbid Alvarez struggles with the weight, or they want to go with Alvarez. Because, he obviously burnt the red shirt last year. He's going to be in red shirt to start out. But they have some really good options now at 33 with Heilman right there for the entire season. But then at 41, that's some serious depth for Rutgers, considering Alvarez is a former All-American. Alvarez is an NCAA qualifier as well. They're looking good right now at the lightweights. Yeah,
no doubt. And Alvarez being up at 141, hopefully he can stay healthy and on weight there. It's obviously he's had a couple issues late in the seasons, his last two seasons, staying on weight at 133. So, but last year, Joey Alveri was like a blessing in disguise for that team, just stepping right into that role and being like, wow, this kid's going to be a stud. So the depth is crazy. Alvarez obviously is super, super talented. We've seen him. We've seen flashes of how athletic he is. He's a crazy good scrambler. So I'm really excited. I hope this is the Sammy Alvarez redemption season, because he's due for like a really big season where he stays healthy and then makes a run in the postseason. But Joey Alveri's right there, and he'll be ready to step up and step in, and maybe he'll win the spot. Maybe he'll win the spot. I don't think he will. I think it's Sammy Alvarez's spot at 141, and that's why they're going to redshirt Alveri. But the motivation is there for Sammy Alvarez with Joey Alveri right behind him. He knows he needs to stay sharp, or they can make that change to Alveri.
Yeah, no doubt. And Goody mentioned in the presser during media day that Alvarez is, when he's good, he could beat pretty much anybody in the country that way, especially it's a wide open weight class this year. Penn State's Nick Lee, of course, no longer in the lineup due to his graduation. But, he mentioned before, if Alvarez slips up, whether it's, on the mat, or obviously it's through his weight. They have a guy who's really hungry and who wants to wrestle, and that's Joey Alveri. So looking forward to watching both those guys all year. Even if Alveri's in red shirt, I'm excited to watch him in some of those open tournaments unattached and see how he keeps developing at a new weight. 149, got to talk about this guy just by himself right here. Was Anthony White is scheduled, or is set to start at 149 for Rutgers this year. Tremendous redshirt season, over 20 wins last year as a redshirt freshman. He's going to step in now as a redshirt freshman. It's unbelievable. What the hype around him is. He wasn't a big time recruit, Matt, but he has a lot of hype in that room. The coaching staff is very excited for him. He could be, what Rutgers would consider like the next type of Anthony Ashnault type of wrestler, because he was that good last year. And I think around Jersey, there's a lot of hype around him. I think there is starting to be a little bit more national buzz about Anthony White, but I think once he steps on that mat, especially on Friday against Clarion, if he's the guy they're going to throw out there for that first dual meet, and he starts developing as soon as we get to the Big Ten schedule, I think he's a guy that you have to watch out for nationally at this point, based on what he was able to show in redshirt last year.
No doubt. He was 21-4 as a redshirt freshman last year. That's just outstanding. He's got the pedigree. You said it all, Nick. This kid is the real deal. And I think this is where we see him really take that next step from really talented freshman season, broke onto the scene. And now this year is that next step up where, hey, I think he's going to be gunning for top 10 in the country by the time the season ends. I think he'll be right around there, and he'll be pushing for that All-American status, no doubt. He's really fun to watch, and he's going to be the spark plug in the middle of this lineup.
Yeah, he could be that guy that just breaks out all of a sudden. It's that, when Jersey Mike's arena explodes, it's like, oh, Anthony White's coming up. Yeah, it's time to really step on the gas here. 157 and 165, interesting weights because 157, as I mentioned before, Andrew Clark dropped 257. He won the Princeton Open just this past weekend. Robert Kennard is back as well. I mean, we've seen Kennard, and we're like, I feel like, Matt, we're just waiting for Kennard to finally break out and break through and get through that wall, get over that hump, so to speak. But Clark's right there. That's probably going to be a battle at 157 as they go through the duels and they go through the open tournaments throughout this first semester of the season. So I'd say that's, to me, I really don't know where to go with that spot right now, but I think Clark seems like he's back at the right weight. And I think this, as long as Kennard stays healthy, it seems like Kennard has just been plagued by injuries. Obviously, the COVID season did not help him at all as well, where he barely got mat time. I think he's just been plagued by lack of mat time. Obviously, we saw him with the broken nose last year wearing that big face mask. So to me, it's Kennard's spot right now based on what he's shown in the past, but we're waiting for him to get over the hump. But Clark, I guess he looks a lot better at 157 though.
Yeah, I think Clark is coming down because this is his weight. I think, it's a better weight for him to be at than 165. He's also a very highly recruited guy out of Collingswood. I think this is Clark's spot. Kennard has taken his lumps over the last couple of years, like you mentioned. Some good matches, some bad matches. He was 11-9, I think he finished last year. So he's got the experience, but Clark got a lot of experience at 165 last year as well, and he was tough, man. So I think the reason he's coming down is because he's going to be the starter at 157. I think that's the only reason. One, it's a better weight, and two, they need a guy there, and I think it's Andrew Clark.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch that battle throughout the first couple of months of the year. Obviously, the coaching staff is high on Clark, as you mentioned. He was one of their bigger recruits the other year. And, coming from a tough place like Collingswood, I mean, they love the raw talent he has just to try to put it all together now, probably at the right weight. So 165, another interesting one, Connor O'Neill dropping down. You got true freshman Luke Gayer right there. It seems like this is going to be O'Neill's spot. He qualified for NCAA's last year, 174. As we know, he was at 174 last year out of necessity due to Jackson Turley undergoing that season-ending shoulder surgery. He's fully healthy. He's back and ready to go. So we'll talk about him in a second, of course. But it looks like O'Neal is back at the weight he should be at. Obviously, we remember him a couple of years ago during the COVID year where they barely had a season, and that dude was in and out of the protocol, even if he didn't test positive back then. I mean, he just missed so much mat time. I think he only had the 4 matches that year. He was 0-4 as a freshman. And he got the year back, obviously, due to the waiver. And then last year, he's like, oh, yeah, we have to keep you at 74 because Turley went down as well. But, hey, he qualified for NCAA's, and he got a pin in the at NCAA's as well. So he does have some experience in the big show as well. So, he was another big recruit for them as well. State champion out of, I believe it was Del Barton. He came from. And he's fairly familiar with Robert Kennard as well, having faced him in the state finals as well a few years back as well. So there's a lot of talent with Connor O'Neill. He's a guy that's been in the program with the SKWC through high school, through youth and high school wrestling, coming all the way up. I think he's finally at the right weight. Again, he finished 4th at the Princeton Open on Sunday. So maybe it's still a little hit and miss, Matt, but I think at least he's at the right weight. So we could see maybe a more aggressive and a better Connor O'Neill this year.
Yeah, I'm rooting for him down back at 165 where he started his freshman season, as you mentioned. Tough season last year, 14-19. He's a guy that I really just am hoping takes a leap forward this season, especially at that spot in the lineup. 165 is a tough weight, but it's the right weight for him. He was wrestling up last year, as we said. So, yeah, I think this is one of the weaker spots in Rutgers' lineup, but Connor O'Neill does have the potential to be obviously above 500, which he has yet to do in college. But I think this is the season we see him, break that 500 barrier, but probably the weaker point in the lineup for the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, and you don't know what they're going to do with Luke Gayer yet. Obviously, he's going to wrestle a lot this season, of course, with the redshirt dates. He gets 5 dates before they can officially pull his redshirt or keep him in redshirt for this year. And he's obviously a highly touted kid coming out of California as well. So we'll see what they do with that part of the lineup as well. But O'Neill seems to be the guy. And if he's at the right weight, maybe his technique starts to open up and he gets a little bit more comfortable wrestling those Big Ten guys at 165. I mean, it doesn't get any easier. Of course, 65, 74, 2 of the toughest weight classes in the conference. 174, Jackson Turley. We saw this dude break out. I mean, he was an All-American a couple of years ago. Injuries plagued him last year, unfortunately. We saw him earlier in the year and we're like, what's going on with him? just the shoulder just wasn't right. Eventually gets shut down, gets the surgery, but great to have him back in the lineup. Obviously, he's a hammer, former All-American. He's one of the 3 returning All-Americans on this roster, of course. So I think it's pretty much for Jackson Turley. If he's healthy, he's obviously one of the better guys in the country. And it's pretty much, Matt, probably All-American or bust for him.
Yeah, he finished as an All-American in 2021 and literally his first full season because you don't really count the COVID season. But yeah, Turley's a beast. Injured last year, he's back. Apparently, he's fully healthy. That's really good news for the Scarlet Knights team. He's a hammer. The kid's a beast. And like you said, the goal is All-American, no doubt about it. He finished as an All-American in 2021. Rough start to last season, but it was revealed he wasn't healthy, and then, he shut it down. So really looking forward to what Jackson Turley has in store this year.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that can really get the arena going when there's all 8,000 plugged into Jersey Mike's arena. I mean, he's a flashy kid. He's obviously going to go for the pin, go for the big move. Not afraid to do that. At 184, probably the most fascinating weight class on this team, considering what they have there in terms of depth and talent. John Poznansky looks like he's going to be the starter right now, but you never know because, again, he actually technically can wrestle 5 varsity seasons because of that COVID waiver where he finished 4th in the country as a true freshman. And, of course, last year got back to NCAAs, started to pick it back up despite his injury last year, Matt, but just didn't have the juice he had as a true freshman, unfortunately, and the injury definitely slowed him down. I was talking to him at media day as well. He took a lot of time off in the summer, went back to a Yale Street Wrestling Club, worked on his wrestling over there. He lifted a lot. I mean, I don't know if you follow him on social media, but that dude lifts a crap ton. I mean, this dude is constantly putting up some big weight. He looks stronger, looks faster. He said it's the best he's ever felt. Coach Goodell said this is the best he's ever looked as well. So a lot of hype around him again to try to get back to the podium. He said he knows for a fact he's going to win a national title before it's all said and done. Certainly has the potential to do that. But Brian Soldano is he's on the team for a reason. He was recruited for a reason. He came here for a reason. He's big. Former state champion out of High Point. I've seen this kid in the offseason as well, wrestling freestyle, called a couple of his matches. I mean, he is an absolute stud. He might have it. He might have that it factor, Matt. So it's going to depend on what they want to do. Obviously, Paz is still eligible for a red shirt, but they have to be careful with him. Like if he's in, I believe the way it works, I think since he's not a freshman, he can't use those dates. So I think he's probably going to be in the lineup right away. Or maybe they use Soldano early on and keep wrestling Paz unattached at some of the bigger tournaments. Maybe they use Soldano. Here's one of your 5 dates, and we'll still decide later on because you have to be able to determine who's better suited for that Big Ten schedule. Is it Paz or is it Soldano? I feel like it could be either one of these guys right now, but I'm leaning towards Paz starting for the year and putting Soldano on redshirt. Then you figure it out with those weights next year.
Yeah, this is, I think, the biggest storyline in this lineup right now is that you have the 184 weight class with 2 absolute hammers, and everyone's excited to see what Soldano can do. 3-time state champ out of High Point, I think.
Yeah, High Point.
So, yeah, he's like obviously one of the most highly touted recruits Rutgers has landed in the last couple.
He was like a top 5 overall recruit.
Right.
He was way up there in a lot of those recruiting ranks.
He is, yeah, he's a blue chipper for sure. And it's crazy that that he's at the same weight as a guy like John Poznansky, who, 20-8 last year, really struggled down the stretch a little bit, but was getting bonus points in nearly 30% of his matches. Like this kid, and like you said, Nick, he is built like a gorilla, man. He is so jacked and just wrestles so tough. So Poznansky, Soldano, whoever it is, it's going to be fun to watch. But yeah, definitely the biggest storyline.
No doubt. 197 looks like Billy Janzer back and ready to go. He had surgery last year. He's the guy at 197, and I mentioned those weights before. I mean, you never know what is going to happen with Soldano and Poznansky. Say Paz wrestles this year, Soldano red shirts, then maybe they flip next year, and then you make a weight change, but they still have plenty of years of eligibility left. Obviously, Janzer in the lineup at 197 right now. Looks pretty good. We know how tough this kid is, and we've talked to him plenty of times. He's a 2-time NCAA qualifier, qualified at 184 and 197. So he's got the potential to do something, but we've always said it's time for him to open up that offense a little bit. Maybe he took some time to get adjusted to that weight at 197. But obviously, you want to talk about built like a gorilla. He's basically built like a gorilla or a rhinoceros, whatever you want to call him. But he's always in your face, that type of wrestler. So excited to watch him. But obviously, that's a key spot in the lineup. Those are the true big boys of the Big Ten. excluding the heavyweights. So Janser either is going to have his hands full or he's going to be ready to go here in 2022 and 2023.
Yeah, I think this is another guy who can take a big leap forward here this year is Billy Janser. And we've seen what he can do on the mat before. Hasn't had a full opportunity to do it with the injuries and such, but big spot in the Rutgers lineup. And another guy that just, if he can take a step up, this lineup is that much better. And they're really gonna look good in the Big Ten. If a bunch of these guys, I feel like they have a lot of guys in this lineup who are just one step away from,
right,
that next level. And if a few of those guys can reach it, they're going to be a really good team. And I think Janser is one of those guys for sure. He's a question mark, but the talent is there.
Yeah, not saying trophy team this year if all breaks right, but obviously this is a team that considers themselves in that top 4 race if all breaks right with the development as well. And again, maybe not this year, maybe not even next year, but down the line you have all these young guys come up and you have a solid set lineup by next year, or obviously at some point this year you have a set lineup. But when you have every guy in the right spot, you might have one of the better lineups in the country, a top 10 lineup in the country by next year or by 2 years from now. I mean, Coach Goodell, he even said as a dual meet team, he's like, yeah, I'm kind of tired of being, in that top 15 range, top 18 range, always being in top 20. Like, we want to be top 10. We want to be top 8. We need to be among the big 4. He always calls them the Big 10. Obviously Penn State, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State. You look at Nebraska and Minnesota as well. Like, if you're in that tier, then it's like, all right, this is a team that's going to be not to be trifled with, essentially. So heavyweight, last one, then we'll get some quick hitters in to wrap this up, Matt. But heavyweight, it's Boone McDermott. Obviously, there was a lot of hype around Keontae Hamilton last year. He's obviously pivoted and gone to football full time. So good for him, man. I mean, he starts on that defensive line. Was started last year. He's been starting this year as well. So he obviously is all in with football. Obviously, Coach Goodell said they would welcome him back if the opportunity presented itself. But he's out of here now. So this is the Boone McDermott show. They have some other guys coming up that are going to be in redshirt as well. But this is pretty much Boone McDermott, but it's a 40-pound heavier Boone McDermott. He's at 260, looks pretty solid. Obviously looks a little faster, looks a lot stronger. And he was telling me on last Friday, he was like, yeah, I'm not afraid to shoot now. Like, I'm ready to actually shoot in on these big boys, take them down, and just not get tramped essentially. Because he was basically 40 pounds underweight against all these big Big Ten heavyweights. So I'm excited to watch him now. I mean, we saw him last year. He can hit those throws, man. He is very exciting, but I think now that he has the strength and the weight to him, he has a real shot now to make a little noise in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think last year was the coming out party for Boone McDermott. A lot of hype around him, and he had some pretty good matches, some not so good matches too. But like you said, adding the 40 pounds of weight that is so big at heavyweight.
Muscle too. I mean, this dude is eating clean.
Right. And like you said, he likes to go up and throw people, which is always fun at the heavyweight position. And it's a great thing for a heavyweight to be able to do. I'm excited to see him. I think that 1 year of Big Ten experience is going to prove to be huge for him heading into this year. I think last year was a learning curve for him and just, getting thrown to the wolves a little bit in the Big Ten, but he hung in there and he's a very athletic kid, which is always a benefit at heavyweight. So yeah, pumped for Boone McDermott as well. And especially that he's 30 pounds heavier. I think that's great.
Yeah, no doubt. So we're done with the lineup here, but obviously we can talk expectations right here, kind of combine this question. They don't have a guy like Anthony Ashnall, Nick Suriano, or Sebastian Rivera in the lineup that's going to be in the thick of it for a national title. I mean, obviously a guy like John Poznansky was in the thick of it just 2 years ago, so he could be that guy if he's in the lineup all year long and could be fighting for, trying to be the runner-up to Aaron Brooks. I hate to say that, but obviously Aaron Brooks on a different level right now for Penn State. But, they don't – basically my point is they don't have a guy that's like, okay, I can see that guy winning a national title this year. They have a couple of returning All-Americans, a bunch of NCAA qualifiers in the past as well, all back in this lineup, but they have to put it all together. So the way I see it, man, I don't want to put like a firm prediction on it right now without seeing them at least once in person, but this feels like to me at the peak of their powers, maybe a lineup that gets at best 4 All-Americans this year. Maybe you get like 7, 8, 9 NCAA qualifiers at most, because, it's very tough to get 10. They've had 10 once, I believe, in the last 6 years. That was back when they went to Madison Square Garden. I think that was 2016 or 27. That was 2016, actually. So, but other than that, they've gotten on a regular basis 6 to 7, maybe 8 qualifiers a year. So that's kind of where I see him again this year. Because, again, you have some new guys in there, some young bucks, but maybe at the peak of their powers this year, man. And maybe I see it by the end of the year, You probably have a top 15 dual team with a lot of winnable matches, some big ones, though, against Penn State and Michigan, which we're going to be calling later in the season as well on Big Ten Plus. But other than that, maybe a top 15 dual team. And I'd say, maybe at their peak could probably get 3, if not 4 All-Americans out of this lineup this year in the 2023 tournament out of let's just say 8 or 9 qualifiers.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think All-American watch, my All-American watch for this lineup, and if you want to add one, Nick, or you think I'm forgetting anyone, I'm going to say Sammy Alvarez, Tony White, Turley, and Poznansky.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I think you could throw in, depending upon who goes 25, I think either one of those guys, Shawver or Peterson, could be a guy that's going to, probably get onto the podium. I could actually see it, particularly Shawver, because he has the experience. Peterson has a lot of maybe long-term potential to be much higher on the podium, just based on what I see right now. But I think the way Dylan Shawver wrestles, the way he wrestled against Pat Glory, I think and the way Peterson wrestled against Pat Glory as well, I think one of those two guys has a chance as well if you're going to add a fifth in there. But I think those 4, Alvarez, Turley, Poznansky, and Anthony White, I think right off the bat has a legit shot as well. I think that's probably your best case scenario for 4 this year.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I think Tony White's going to really surprise people, and
I really think so too.
I think he's going to be an absolute stud this season. Obviously, I'm hoping he is, but from what we saw out of him last season, and I'm sure he, really improved this offseason. A whole year of experience under his belt. He's got a back in the lineup right there at 149, and I think he's going to be the guy that we're looking at the end of the season. He's definitely going to be an All-American.
One guy that you might have been forgetting, and I almost forgot about him too, Joe Heilman, former NCAA qualifier as well. I think he has a good chance at 133 as well to make a run at that podium. Obviously, everyone has national title on their mind, but I think realistically, if you're picking out just All-Americans right now, I think Heilman's another guy that could give him another one down at the lower weights as well. But wrap this up, Matt. I have one more for you. Obviously, we're going to be back together on Friday, and it's back at the barn, the College Ave Gym. A little special event for Rutgers Wrestling to kick off the dual meet season against Clarion, 6 p.m. on Friday, Big Ten Plus. You can catch Matt and I there on the broadcast. I'm excited, man. I'm excited to go back to the barn. Obviously, they used to practice down there in that dungeon. That was their facility, so they got the new one. As a member of the club wrestling team while we were in college, it's dirty down there. It's grimy. You get a big sweat. It's hot down there. You love it. It's old school. They bred all Americans and national champions out of that room, and Anthony Ashnall and Nick Suriano. So it obviously works. So, but I'm excited to see these guys wrestle back at the barn for the first time in a few years.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I've never seen a match in the barn, so this is going to be really cool to be on the call for it. And what a great way to kick off the season with a match in the College Ave Gym.
Yeah, no doubt. Long season ahead of us for a wrestling season here in 2022 and 23. Matt and I will be on Big Ten Plus Friday at 6 p.m. Be sure to check it out there if you can't make the match in attendance. And I believe it's not going to be a low turnout, obviously. It's going to be a good turnout, but probably 1,000, 1,500 people. It's a low-capacity arena, so that'll be exciting. And obviously, catch Rutgers at Jersey Mike's Arena all season long. Of course, if you can't make the match, be sure to watch Matt and myself on Big Ten Plus all year long during Rutgers home meets for this upcoming season. Matt, appreciate the time, man. I can't wait to see you Friday. It's final wrestling season, baby.
We're here. It's here. Can't wait, Nick.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter as well at How You Doing, and of course at Nick Kosko 59. We'll give you all the stuff on Rutgers Wrestling all season long. Take it easy, everybody. Rutgers Wrestling Friday on Big Ten Plus, 6 p.m. from the College Ave Gym.